Hello, everybody. Bo Billington with Finding That Next Gear, where we talk to high growth entrepreneurs and how they took a company from ideation, inception to scaling growth. Super pumped today to have Johnny Page. Johnny, thanks for joining.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, now you're a little bit different than our typical guests because we typically talk to like founders or entrepreneurs, and you frame yourself up as an entrepreneur, which is a word obviously we're hearing more and more about. Prior to jumping into things, I'd love to hear kind of like what what your definition of an entrepreneur is. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I would say an entrepreneur does everything an owner does, and thinks about the company's interests first, and whether that is in their job description or not, is thinking bigger picture. So of course, I've got a job description, whatever role I'm in, I'm going to nail that, but I'm also just going to think about what's the company looking to achieve and making sure that my actions and the actions that I can influence throughout the org are in alignment with that bigger picture.
Makes sense, yeah. And what's really cool about your story as well, I obviously did some research and saw the video, and so originally pursuing a path down professional golf, which obviously is could be a tough career for some. Then you found business, scaled a company, and now you're at SaaS Academy. Like prior to jumping into that, like talk to me a little bit about the golf and the journey, and like when was it time to kind of make that decision and do a crossover, kind of put that behind you and move into the business side of the world.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was 16, so I played youth sports growing up. At 16, I picked up golf, which is late in the
At
game for
16.
anyone
I've been playing since 9 and I suck.
yeah, it's late in the game. So yeah, you'll know, like, if you're playing high level competitive golf,
Yes.
you're competing against people that have started playing when they're 3 years old, 5 years old. It was a single sport focus from very early on. So I was able to walk on my freshman year of college, and then ended up being scholarship my last 2 years. But the gap between what I thought, I loved golf, but I really loved the social and just the environment that I was in. When you play on a collegiate golf team, like, we had so many resources there to support us. Like, I never had to think about cooking my own food. We had a practice facility on campus. We had 2 golf courses we could play at for free, and had 20 guys that were pursuing, playing golf at a high level. When I moved cross country to pursue playing professionally, all of that extra support goes away. And so it's just you versus you. And I found very quickly that while I loved golf, I loved, pursuing a big, ambitious goal with people that I
Yeah.
really enjoyed being around, which is what led me to business.
Got it. No, super interesting. Well, let's talk a little bit about SaaS Academy. And so, you've been with them for better part of almost 4 years, and looks like you've had a myriad of different roles within the organization. And
Yeah.
what's cool is kind of like a tagline that says you guys have worked with 800 founders of SaaS companies, helping them to scale. So we'd love to hear about kind of your role within the organization, and maybe how that's evolved over the last, 1, 2, 3 years as you guys have continued to kind of grow.
Yeah, well, so it's helpful to have some context. So SaaS Academy is a coaching program for B2B software founders only. I actually joined as a client about in 2017. So I was a client for 2.5 years. And in my time as a client, from the first event that I walked into, I knew that this was a community and a tribe that I wanted to be a part of for a long time. I didn't know how and in what capacity. I just knew I'd be involved. And so in 2019, we sold the company that I was CEOing, Silvertrack Software. I stayed on with that company for about 18 months through the COVID years. But
Wow.
all through that time, I was staying connected to Dan Martell, the founder of SaaS Academy, figuring out ways to work together. So I started coaching fractionally, just in my area of expertise. I had a knack for marketing and for sales. So I jump into companies that were having a hard time with their go-to-market and do some advising. And then
Sure.
that grew into, in 2021, Dan was looking to make a hire to own the customer success function of the company. He's looking to hire a chief customer officer. So like, that was the first opportunity to work together in a full-time capacity. So I left the Silvertrack and the company that acquired us and came to work for Dan in 2021. And then shortly after that, became a partner in SaaS Academy. And then just about a year ago, took over as the CEO. So held a number of different hats. That entrepreneur mindset takes you in a lot of different directions. Like, I came over to just run customer success. And about 4 months after that, we started having some challenges with marketing, and I could just, stay in my lane and focus on customer success. But I just, the business is not going to win unless we figure out this marketing challenge. And so, took over our marketing department, and then another 4 or 5 months later, our sales department was having some challenges and a turnover in leadership. So I took that over, became the CRO. And at no point in any time that I've been in a company, like I'm not a great employee. I want to be in charge. I want to influence. And so regardless of whether or not there's a reward system where I'm going to get paid for that, effort or focus, like I just can't help like come in and be thinking big picture. And fortunately, I've worked in some great organizations and for some great leaders that have always like made sure that the payoff was there long term. But it's led to like much faster pace of promotions and increased influence and responsibility when you do the work first, and when you like wait for the job title or for the compensation to be there first, and then you start doing the job, which I think slows a lot of people down in their careers.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, definitely sound like a utility player, and those are like, so hard for companies to find, and you don't know you have one until they leave. You know what I mean? And so,
Mhm.
really, really like the backdrop too about the fractional work, because that's a lot of the work that we do. And I haven't heard from somebody kind of having that path where they scaled company, exited, providing fractional services, and now you're in such a unique niche where you're actually leveraging the skills that you learned along the way. Let's talk a little bit about the fractional space for a little bit. I mean, so when you were doing that, was it just kind of like sales work, like CRO work, like go to market strategy with SaaS companies, almost kind of doing it in a vacuum, doing the same work that you're doing now, just independent of your organization?
Yeah, so the way that SaaS Academy works is we place clients into an ecosystem that makes them successful. So most people would compare us to like a consulting service. So if you work one-on-one with a consultant, they spend a lot of time telling you the same things they've told other people. And so you're paying for that on an hourly basis. SaaS Academy, we pair you with a coach, but we also have campus, which is a library full of training. And then we have our community component as well. So you can learn from other people trying to do the same thing you're trying to do. So when I was fractionally coaching, I'm there to help advise on some of the same playbooks that I learned from our campus and from my coach previously, and helping a client work through the implementation. So we use training to get them up to speed on, for example, someone's building out a partner strategy. There's a whole like 0 to 1 understanding of how partnerships work, and then a lot of the messy middle happens when you go to implement it. So I was there when they had a client working through the implementation of one of these strategies and just needed some feedback on their help on what they were working on. I was there to jump in and give some feedback based on my experience. So that was just a way for us to keep the relationship going. Like I think both Dan and I knew that there was an opportunity to work together, just looking for the right one. So just a low, you know, um, consequence, low stakes way for us to stay in touch and to stay involved. And then that grew into taking over the customer success team.
No, it makes total sense. And then in regards to kind of like your ideal customer profile, you mentioned that it's, B2B SaaS founders. Are you like hands-on work, or is it more so kind of like work with you, right? So you're ultimately kind of training up the founder on best practices from a go-to-market perspective, or are you actually implementing some of the strategies?
Yeah, no, very like almost never will we have a deliverable or a work product as a part of our working relationship. So we think of most business services can be packaged in one of three ways. You've got do it yourself, so selling a course or training exclusively. You got done with you, which is a combination of training and coaching, and then you got done for you, which is where a lot of your agencies and services live. We don't go into the done for you. I have partnerships and partners that our clients work with. So if we give them a strategy that says, hey, we need to go, double down on organic, on content creation and win the SEO game, if they need help implementing that, they can work with some of our partners to move faster. But SaaS Academy is the strategic guidance, the tactical playbooks to go do it yourself. And of course, we've got forums and other clients. The community component is huge for working with people. For example, huge benefit if you are working on building a partnership strategy to go talk to someone who like their only sales channel is partnerships, and you get to see what it looks like being implemented. So we lean a lot on the community side and on our group coaching calls to get support on the implementation, but we don't have like deliverables, not like a fractional CRO would if they were coming in and they're responsible for putting together an operating plan, hiring, building out sales processes, etc.
Now, do you typically work with just the founders, or will the founders tap, maybe their leadership team, and you'll work directly with one of their CROs that maybe is a budding CRO, needs a
Yep.
little bit of air support?
We only work with the founder. The founder is the person that we coach. They have to be present in every one of the coaching calls, but they can enroll 2 team members because we don't want the founder being the bottleneck. Like Dan is famous now for having written the book Buy Back Your Time. It is really, we say all the time, like if we help our founders build their people, they will build the business. So really helpful if a founder's focus is on reducing churn or is on product or is on a pricing optimization to bring in the executive or the leader that's pushing that forward, and we can work through them. But the founder stays involved throughout their time in the program. They can enroll team members and switch them out based on the focus, and so that the team gets the support as well.
Got it. And is there kind of an ROI affixed to the engagement model? So, you'll scale the business by XYZ at the end of the program. Any way that you kind of quantify the engagement?
Oh, 100%. Like ultimately, people don't continue working with us if they don't see growth in their revenue. Fortunately, like it's a recurring revenue business model, so it's really simple to see. Like when we come in, we do an assessment. We kind of turn the business inside out and figure out where are you at right now. We view every SaaS company as a math problem. Like everyone thinks that their business is unique. The reality is the unit economics will tell us exactly where the constraint is. So once we see where the constraint's at, all of our strategic planning goes towards that challenge. Every quarter they meet with the coach and redo their game plan. And so that is going to show like the before and after. And then of course, at the end of the year, most of the time it's a no brainer to continue working again, because there's a whole nother, just as you know, there's levels in business. Every time we're trying to find product market fit, we find it, then we figure out, hey, we've got to go get out of founder-led sales. We try to get out of founder-led sales, and we got to realize that our retention and our position needs some work. So there's always another level to it. But quarterly we sit down and look at, hey, are we picking the right projects? Are we executing well? Is it showing up in the leading and lagging indicators in the business? So yeah, big ROI case. And our goal is to get ROI positive in the first 90 days and then have the next 90 or next 9 months to prove out even more ROI.
Interesting. Now, it's funny, founder-led sales, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur myself, and we also work with a lot of high growth companies. So what we hear a lot of times when they bring us in is for like, a fractional CRO with the goal of getting the founder out of founder-led sales. What's generally the catalyst for somebody, calling SaaS Academy? Is it founder stuck in founder-led sales, working in the business, not on the business? Like, what are some triggers where somebody would know that it'd be a good time to maybe have a conversation with you?
Well, there's a few. I would say the one, if it's pain led, it is the growth has stalled out in the business. So we actually are writing a book that comes out in October, but core to the methodology is every business every recurring revenue business has a growth ceiling. So there's a calculator. You can go to SaaSacademy.com to see this calculator. You can just run the numbers yourself, but it's a combination of how many customers are you bringing in every month, how many new customers do you bring in, how many do you churn, and how much are they worth? So I can tell you exactly when you'll stop growing. Most businesses that come to us have hit that growth ceiling. And so now it's a matter of, and they've tried a few things. They're throwing a lot up against the wall, trying to get, more clients coming in. So you could say, okay, one of those levers has to move. Either we're churning less per month, we keep bringing in the same net new customers, we bring in more than we're churning, or we increase how much a customer is value us. Is the only 3 ways that you can grow. So if it's pain led, a client comes to us because they've hit the growth ceiling. If it is because they're a smart entrepreneur, a lot of times we get founders saying, hey, I just want to go to someone who's been there and done that. Like, I heard this saying one time, dumb people don't learn from their mistakes. Smart people learn from their mistakes, and geniuses learn from other people's mistakes. So cool thing is that we have had, you said 800 earlier. At this point, it's over 3,000 founders have come through SaaS Academy. Dan Martell himself started 5 companies, sold 3. Myself and Matt both started and sold our own companies. So there's a track record for success here. So if you're building a SaaS company, I say all the time to my team, I'm interested in making new mistakes, not the same mistakes other people have made. Like, let's go get to the new frontier. So, if it's opportunistic led, it's someone saying, hey, I want to move fast. I don't want to go to the school of hard knocks on building a SaaS company. Like, I want to take the frameworks that you guys have, model them, modify based on my experiences, and just ultimately use SaaS Academy to move faster.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting, and that's where we also have a lot of conversations with companies is where, they had great success and then they stalled or they're declining. And a lot of times, they may have gotten lucky with product market fit. They found one customer that needed it, and then they go to market and figure out that they kind of have a dud, right? Nobody else
Yep.
needs it. So how do you fix that? You've got to, retool a few things. So the founders that you typically work with, those that are, and obviously I'm sure everybody has success, but those that are more prone to super success within the academy, like what are the characteristics that they typically possess?
Okay, so the question was how many, what is unique? What are the characteristics of the clients that have like exceptional results in the program?
Exactly.
The first one is like we say this all the time, but model, then modify. So we're going to give you a framework that's first principles based and has best practices baked in. A lot of times client will watch that and they'll implement some version of it where
Hmm.
they've made some modifications. And it's like, no, no, like just do exactly what we say. Like, for example, we have a framework for we call it the authority site builder. So there's a way that your website needs to be set up to
Yes.
drive conversions. Now, over time, we will do conversion rate optimization. But if you don't have anything right now, start with what we teach. Same thing for our for giving a software demo. Like we have a framework called the Rocket Demo Builder. When you're doing a demo, you need to follow this framework. And a lot of times they'll use it to inspire what their version one is, but they don't model what we're teaching. So the first thing is they just like trust the process. There's like a high degree of buy-in. So we're not trying to convince them that it's going to work while also trying to implement. It's like, hey, let's trust. You're here for a reason. You paid us.
Right.
Like, let's lean in, trust the process. The second one is they are very focused. There's high follow through, which is really challenging to do, especially when you bring one of the downsides of being in an ecosystem like SaaS Academy is that you get to see hundreds of other software companies, how they're growing, what their retention strategies are. We put you in campus that has over 400 playbooks. So it's almost like taking an alcoholic to a bar, and that founders are already prone to like, shiny object syndrome. So the ones that are really, really successful, they put the blinders on and they just go hard in the paint on the problems that we've highlighted in their strategic game plan session. So the combination of model, then modify, and be ruthless execution, whether we've picked the right strategies or not, one of the most challenging things that can happen is if we get to the end of a quarter or the end of a year and we don't have any results. And it's hard for us to know, did we pick the right strategy or the wrong strategy, or did we just not execute well? If we can eliminate an entire variable, if we just stay focused and execute the game plan. So the two things that I just mentioned are going to make sure that we can eliminate half that equation and say, okay, it was not an execution challenge, right? We like took best practices, we implemented them, we stayed focused. We didn't get past the first iteration, third, fourth, but we like went deep on this and the strategy either worked or it didn't. Now we can go back to the table and say, okay, hey, maybe there was something about the persona we were targeting, the sales motion. Maybe we need a lower touch or a higher touch, whatever it is. It makes sure the strategy is the conversation, not just execution. So those are a few of the characteristics. The other ones are just like there got to be a strong leader, right? At the end of the day, you got to attract top talent, have a clear vision for what you're driving towards, be disciplined, be an inspiring person. So those are things that we can help. But if you're coming in ready-made for success, you've got a lot of those leadership qualities baked in.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Like kind of the old Steve Jobs adage, why hire smart people if you don't listen to them? And I totally agree. And in fact, in my business as well, I try to kind of, make sure that my customer base is devoid of people that aren't open to learning, because
Yeah.
otherwise, they're not going to get a quality product from us, and it's a waste of everybody's time. And
Yeah.
I totally agree kind of about the shiny object syndrome. It's an affliction that I suffer from myself, but then the execution piece. Like, it's
Yeah.
great ideas, but if you can't execute, how good are the ideas? Um,
Yeah.
and in that vein, I think a good follow-on would be, if you look at your customer base, are most of these companies bootstrapped? Are they kind of 0 to 1? Are they 1 to 5? Are they, funded? Like, talk to me a little bit about kind of the makeup of the companies that you guys typically work with.
Yeah, it's fluctuated. So during the COVID years, a lot higher percentage were funded because there's just a lot more funding to go around.
Yeah,
Now it's more and more bootstrapped, and if we target and speak to the challenges for a bootstrap founder. We want to make sure the unit economics are good in the business and it's not dependent on funding. Funding can be an accelerant, but we don't want to build it into a dependency of the business. So
totally.
right now the mix is probably 70-30, 70% bootstrapped, 30% funded. We work exclusively, we have 3 programs. We work exclusively from about, zero. They need to have a product, but they can be pre-revenue. So from 0 all the way up to about 30 million. The sweet spot's really between like 0 and 3 million is where the majority, 85%. We have about 50% of our clients are going from 3 to 30.
Yeah.
But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, no, it does totally. And that makeup makes sense as well because you're probably dealing a lot. Well, you're dealing with founders, right? So it's founder led, it's founder sales. A lot of them also are product people, right, or technically savvy, so they need some help. Last question about kind of the company and the focus areas, but I mean, is it full service? Do y'all get into the product side at all, like web design, or is it strictly mainly on kind of like the sales and marketing, go to market strategy, marketing, stuff like that?
Yeah, it's funny. So you asked me like, what do people come to SaaS Academy for? Everyone wants chocolate, which is we want more leads, we want more sales.
Yeah,
The broccoli is you got to have a really solid product,
right.
and you got to retain your revenue. And so, yeah, it is full. So we coach across the 6 core functions of the business. So sales, marketing, customer success, product operations, and finance. But very rarely are people raising their hand being like, hey, I think I need more operational support, or hey, I want help reducing my churn. Most of the time it's like, hey, I think I need more business, or need more revenue. And we sit down, we model it out. And again, we could focus on any one of those levers. We could optimize our pricing. We could uh, keep more of our customers, or we could bring new ones in, and we'll just model the impact of like what happens if we improve churn by 1 or 2%, what happens if we increase lead generation by 1 or 2%. And oftentimes the data will show us where to go focus. But yeah, when you, it's still across all functions of the business, still that done with you. So we have like, product best practices. We have how to build your roadmap, make sure we're building something people actually utilize, how to test, how to optimize monetization strategies. We have cash flow and financial management best practices. But yeah, most of the time people are coming to us because they want the chocolate, they want to grow.
That's all anybody wants, right? But you guys
Yeah.
are all encompassing. Well, that's awesome, man. Well, I'll get you out of here in a few moments, but let's talk a little bit more about kind of like owning a company, growing a company. So, obviously it sounds like your passion shines through, which is great. And I think it's really hard to actually be successful in sales if you're not passionate about your product or where you're headed. But in the last, 2 companies, has there been a time where you thought about hanging it up, just because stress or growth is stalled or COVID happened? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Oh, 100%, man. I mean, if you don't find yourself there, look, I think for the first 5 years of my career, like I've always been someone super driven, and I benchmark against the best of the best. So like it wasn't just that I was going to play golf, it was that I was going to be a professional. When when I got into business, it wasn't that I was just going to run a software company. As I'm benchmarking against the Zendesk, the HubSpots, the Salesforces. Like I'm always benchmarking against the best of the best. So the ambition's always been there. There are times though where you don't recognize that growth is living in that place of discomfort. So for the first 5 years, I would like kind of oscillate between, oh my gosh, it's fight or flight, right? You're like, dang it, why am I doing this to myself? Now, more recently, I just recognize that this is, if I say, hey, I want to lead, a company, $100 million company, I have to know the price tag with that. And that's gonna be a whole lot of uncomfortable moments where I'm way in over my head. But I trust now I got a track record of 10 years of closing that gap. And I've actually learned some of the skills to close it faster. Like I used to take me, I'll
Like
have to live in that place of discomfort for longer. So I recognize now that it's part of what I love. I love being in over my head. So there'll be moments where it's like, holy shit, what am
yeah.
I doing? I just take a deep breath and I'm like, man, the number of companies that actually get to solve these problems are pretty rare. Like to get to the point where I'm now, I'm trying to go from, 15, $20 million organization to $100 million organization. Less than 0.4% of companies will ever even get the opportunity to be there. So the moments that I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I should hang this up and go do something, like, I wish I could just go like, I used to be a waiter in college. I love just like waiting on a busy restaurant. Like that was fun.
Yeah.
Mindless work, busy, meet a lot of people. Every once in a while I'll be like, man, I wish we could go back to that. But I'm more often just thankful for the opportunity and recognize just a track record of 10, 12 years doing this. So like on the, when I look in the rearview mirror after a time of burnout, of really challenging times, I'm always really thankful for whatever that challenge was. And so I just need to recognize and lean into that in the moment, which helps it go away a lot faster.
Yeah, so I think a good follow-up to that question, I'll get you out of here on this, but, and first and foremost, I can completely appreciate that sentiment. I mean, there's a book with Gap and Gain or whatever, I can't
Yes.
remember the exact subject, but it's something that we all live as entrepreneurs, and it's tough, and you've gotta sometimes embrace the suck, right? But, in that vein, what do you feel is the number one trait that separates successful entrepreneurs from those that don't make it or just don't really, hit peak success?
Hmm. Well, I mean, one of them is just like, don't give up. It's like, you just got to decide, is this who you are or is it who you're not? Or not? And it's okay. Like, it is really interesting. And for years, man, I used to struggle with, I'm in a community full of entrepreneurs, but I've never started from things from 0 to 1. I've always hopped on the bus and helped scale the company. And so for years I was like, oh my God, I'm not, valid or as valuable unless I go do this on my own. And then I just started like embracing my version of it. So I think
Yeah,
the ones who burn out are the ones who are like, you're trying to live someone else's life or someone else's definition of success. And
right,
so it's like, hey, let's build a scorecard that we judge ourselves against that we actually want to achieve, not
right.
one that someone else has given us. So, there's a why behind entrepreneurship. There's a vision you're trying to birth. There's a life you're trying to create for your family. And when you're connected to that, it's a lot less likely that you burn out from it or that you fail. It just might look different along, how it materializes might look different, but I don't know, man, what the trait that causes people to burn out or to quit, I think it's just living a life that I actually want.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
or
I think too, you nailed it, man. I mean, perseverance is kind of the response that always pops up, and it's the ability to get through the sucky parts, and look for the end of the hill. Because it can be lonely. Entrepreneurship can be very lonely. And then, like, you didn't mention imposter syndrome, but I think also too, a lot of folks struggle with that scenario. It wasn't until I've been in business for 7 years, it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I realized that, like, I'm not good at execution. Like, I like shiny objects. I like being the idea person, but I need somebody that can help actually take ideas, put blinders on me, help me focus, and then help execute. In that vein, I probably need to become a customer of y'all's because I'm sold. And Johnny, I really appreciate the time, man. So where can people find you? I know you got a podcast, which we'll put a link to that, as well as we'll put a link to SaaS Academy. But anything else you want to share?
yeah, I share along. I say that Instagram's kind of like behind the scenes. So I've got Johnny Page 13 as a handle. I share a lot of SaaS content, but also just share like, I'm also a dad. Coach my kids' soccer teams. I'm into fitness. All that. It's like kind of behind the scenes of, if you want the front of the house, the work side. SaaS Academy is a great spot. There's a podcast as well, the SaaS Academy podcast. But I share a lot about life and committed to. I committed. I'm a year and a half into a 10-year commitment of just, producing content and sharing my journey along the way. I wish I would have done that for the first 10 years, but yeah, Instagram's a good spot.
Awesome, man. Yeah, similar to me. I'm a year into journey on LinkedIn. I'm still trying to show a little bit behind the scenes, but I'm a little timid on that. But I wish I started 7 years ago. I'd be light years ahead of where I am. But
Yeah.
anyway, man, truly appreciate the time. Like, sincerely, we'll put some links up here, and yeah, look forward to maybe hearing more myself about SaaS Academy.
All right. Sweet. Awesome. Thanks, Bo. Good to have you.
Awesome, man.